In 2018, Dylan Roth and Dalton Dylan met when their two rock and roll bands played a gig together in New York City. Now, in 2020X, the patrons that be have called upon them to produce a special bonus podcast where they talk about movies and stuff. Are you afraid of us?
Welcome to Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton? This is the show where we do whatever you pay us to do.
Rare in-person bonus pod.
We just finished recording an episode you've likely already heard of Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe with fucking Bill Corbett as our guest.
Crow T Robot himself.
What a lovely guest. What a great time. I'm still glowing a little bit.
Yes, it was an incredible episode, an incredible privilege to have Bill on to do some stupid shit with us.
Yeah, and to get to do the thing, like, we didn't get into this because we don't want to spend the whole episode with Bill Corbett gushing about Bill Corbett. But like, almost every snarky movie fan of our generation has sat in a room watching MST3K and thinking something like, oh, I could do that. You can't. There's a reason, but it's like the kind of thing where like...
Also because they wrote that stuff.
They also wrote that stuff, right?
Although I did see Frank Conniff actually in a basement in Queens do an improvised riff of Ninja Turtles 2, Secret of the Ooze.
Wow.
And he was very funny.
Well, I mean, it was just the opportunity to riff a bad movie with one of like the masters of the form.
Yes.
That's, to me, to date, once in a lifetime. We'll see. Maybe we get Kevin Murphy on the show, right?
Joel Hodgson.
Yes. But like, yeah, what a treat that was.
Really, we would not be the people we are today without Mystery Science Theater, that's for sure.
And those opportunities would likely not be things that would happen to us without you, our loyal listeners. And so we wanted to give you a big thanks for all the ways that you are continually changing our lives week after week.
Yeah.
It's fucking great. And thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much
to Balthazar
for our first commissioned pitch on the show.
Did we have a name for this?
For this, I think it's just, we're just pitching.
I thought we had a name for the segment. Didn't I come up with something kind of funny?
If you did, it wasn't funny enough that I remembered it.
Fuck. It wasn't funny enough that I remembered it either.
It'll come to us. If you have an idea for what this segment ought to be called, hit us up on Blue Sky or Instagram or Twitter at Dark Universe.
Oh, Studio Mandates.
Studio Mandates. There you go.
Studio
Perfect.
Mandates.
Okay.
We can call it that.
This is Studio Mandates.
Unless we think of something better, or if you think of something better.
Yes. And it's submitted for the approval of our studio executive, who requested that we come up with our own Dark Universe remake of Mamma Mia.
Yes.
Which we sat down together in person to watch last week.
If any of you picks Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again, banned from the Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. You're banned.
Absolutely banned. Drone striking your home.
Yeah, you better mask your IP address.
Yeah,
because we understand that this is a beloved movie to many,
and
right?
we understand that Balthazar is an ABBA fan, and I have no problems with ABBA.
No, our takeaway from this is not that ABBA sucks.
No,
our takeaway from this is that we both entered this with some degree of dislike for the format of the jukebox musical. Dalton, you're a real hater on this.
I'm a hater.
I'm a skeptic.
I'm a skeptic. I've seen good jukebox musicals. Probably. Have I seen a good jukebox musical?
I don't know. Is Moulin Rouge?
No. Fuck Moulin Rouge.
Okay.
I hate Moulin Rouge.
Well, by the end of the show, we will think of one that at least one of us likes.
Yeah. The thing is, like, some like biopic musicals are like, I thought the Elton John Rocket Man one was okay.
I've actually never seen it.
It's
I
okay.
hear that that's like one of the few music biopics that escapes the Walk Hard vacuum.
A little bit. It still has the structure of Walk Hard, but it has a little more fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some good arrangements in it, but I don't know if I've ever liked a jukebox musical.
I will say in general, I'm not for it. I don't have the experience you have in like trying to like composing for musical theater other than what I've done for
it's a different form is the thing.
But yes, the idea of having to work backwards from a set of songs that were not intended to be part of a narrative it's a different challenge as a storyteller, but I also dislike it for the same reason why I complain about stuff like Deadpool and Wolverine, where it's like your intention here is not to do something interesting or cool or personal. Your intention here is to sell someone a pre-sold product.
Yeah.
And that's lazy.
You're creating something to just sell to ABBA fans because they like ABBA, and
then accidentally, you might, in this case of Mamma Mia, create a new generation of ABBA fans. But that I don't think was the idea initially. They weren't like, oh, we'll make this into a musical, and then eventually it'll become like a camp classic film. This is for young baby boomers / older Gen X wine moms.
Yeah. We watched this one rare event in person because we were supposed to record with Bill Corbett last Thursday. Bill canceled at the last second. So
rescheduled. But you all know that now.
And it wasn't his fault. He had severe weather.
Yeah, they lost power over there for like a day.
Yeah. So we watched Mamma Mia in my living room with my girlfriend, Sarah. We made it 3 minutes and 15 seconds into the film before Sarah said, "I'm going to kill myself." Sarah, I should point out, is a musical theater composer.
Yes.
So she's a little, more selective about these things.
She objects to Mamma Mia in its very concept and construct, right?
Yeah.
And the execution did it no favors. I'll tell you what, I appreciated this opportunity to trauma bond with Sarah.
Yes.
I feel like we walked out of that better friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've gone through something together now. The cast in this movie, wonderful.
Yeah.
Love the dudes. Stellan Skarsgård, Pierce Brosnan, and Colin Firth.
Yes.
Those are 3 great guys.
And you know what? It is the one of the things that appeals to me. And I understand we're not trying to slather this with gender. When I referred to wine moms earlier, it's not a gender resentment. It's just a cringy type of person, we'll say. But there's it's a measurable amount of dudes rock energy in this film, as it is, among other things, the story of 3 guys who don't realize that they, 20 years ago, all banged the same person and become friends.
Yeah. And that's an inspiring tale for all of us. This is really a polyamory win. This is non-toxic polyamory. So the cast was good. Amanda Seyfried in a bathing suit. Not going to complain about that.
No complaints at all there.
Never going to complain about that. There's the twinky little Dominic guy.
Dominic Cooper, yeah.
Who went on to be, wasn't he
He's
Tony
Howard
Stark's dad?
Stark.
Yeah, in like one movie.
Yes, and the lead in AMC's Preacher, which I have not seen.
Didn't see it.
Yeah.
And of course, you got Meryl Streep, who is a legend and is drunk off her ass through this entire film, as is everybody, I believe.
Yeah, it definitely, we were talking about it when we watched it. It has a little bit of that energy of the movies that Adam Sandler makes for Netflix, where it's just like, let's just pile all of our friends into a private jet and we'll go
take a vacation.
We'll go to Hawaii for 2 weeks and shoot a movie while we're there.
It's sort of like if the crew from Before Midnight decided to make a movie while they were also having their long philosophical conversations about relationships.
Yes, a beautiful Grecian vacation that made like $400 million at the box office.
Yeah.
I might be under something. I don't know the numbers in front of me right now.
Huge hit.
It was one of the most profitable films of its era.
I cannot fathom it. I think because of how much of a hit it was, I was expecting it to be a little more competent than it was.
Yeah.
I've never seen a jukebox musical where the songs are actively working against the narrative all the time. It's like, it's not even that they started with the songs and worked backwards. It's like they had a story and then they took some songs and then they were like, well, let's set up each song in about 20 seconds before the music starts. And if that song completely changes our understanding of a character and their motivations and their wants and desires, who cares? It'll be done in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
and then we'll just go back to normal.
Just pretend it never happened.
Pretend it never happened.
It's very frustrating in that way. It also is funny because it made me question what the genesis of this story was. Was it a concept that was later applied to ABBA songs, or was it we're taking ABBA songs and then we are going to spin them out into stories?
Because none of them have anything to do with each other.
And it is the latter. I found out that this is actually a consequence of one of my favorite troubled musicals, Chess, where the 2 songwriters from ABBA did a musical with Tim Rice called Chess. It's the kind of musical where it's been, every single time it's been put on, they've rearranged the songs and changed the book because it never entirely works, which makes it fascinating because every soundtrack and every performance is different. But when they were making that, one of the Broadway producers they were associating was with, your own songs would make a pretty good musical. Why don't I put some money into that? And they did. And somehow this collection of pop songs that are all pretty lyrically basic pop songs about love and heartbreak and adventure turned into a plot about a 20-year-old woman who is about to get married and would like her father to be at the wedding, but she's never met her father. All she knows, because she's been rummaging through her mother's things and reading her old saucy diaries, one of 3 men might be her father. So she invites all 3 of these men to the wedding under false pretenses, does not tell her mother they're coming. And
never really any justification for any of the sort of layers of deception happening here.
Yeah.
And they constantly kind of sort of almost blow up into conflict, and then they kind of don't
quite do, right?
And it's never clear what the conflict is exactly that's supposed to maybe be blowing up.
No conflict lives longer than the song that the conflict sort of haphazardly sets up.
And the thing is, like, the songs, I feel like my dream for a jukebox musical that I've always wanted to do is I've wanted to write a jukebox musical using Elton John songs pre Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, before he really got super famous, when he was, for some reason, still writing songs about cowboys. Because there are about 4 or 5 albums where all of Bernie Taupin's lyrics are about the American West. And Elton John is singing ballads about the American West. The thing is, all of those songs tell very specific stories set within the American West that I feel like could be put together into a pretty convincing Western musical. These songs are so generic because they are pop disco dance songs that in one sense it doesn't work, because whatever they're singing about could be applied to any situation, and yet it never seems like it fits the situation it's actually being used for.
And like you say, sometimes it sort of walks back something that we know about a character.
Yeah.
And the characters were designed to fit the song. So what the fuck happened?
It's so weird. Dancing Queen, I think, is the most baffling. That seems a pretty easy slam dunk for like a dance at the wedding that they're setting up. I was like, oh, as soon as I found out it was centered around a wedding, I was like, oh yeah, because it's built around Dancing Queen. And so it's a weird sort of little fantasy number that
Dancing
happens.
Queen, instead is Meryl Streep has her 2 best friends, just like Anna Seyfried has her 2 best friends. And this song is Meryl Streep, the mom's friends, trying to remind her of the sense of adventure she had when she was a young woman living on this beautiful island and having 3 incredible love affairs in rapid succession.
But for it being like their biggest hit, the number feels so small. And like, because it's just in this little bedroom. And there's a lot of like...
Don't they eventually go out? Isn't that one of the ones where they go out
right.
and then the entire town joins in?
It like starts very small, then gets really big. I don't know. Like, none of it really tracked for me.
I want to add, though, I also have a dream jukebox musical. I sort of have 2. I was once workshopping with my old songwriting partner a jukebox musical using AC/DC songs, where the first act is all songs from Highway to Hell and the second act is all songs from Back in Black. And it is a vampire comedy set in a high school. We did a long pitch on a car ride once to a gig, and we never ended up doing anything with it. My other thing is that I would like to do a film based mostly around Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, but with a couple of songs from Wild and the Innocent and Darkness on the Edge of Town mixed in, because those are very thematically consistent in terms of being stories about people on either side of the Hudson sort of figuring out their life through sometimes sketchy means and a lot of car-related romance. I think it's a slam dunk. Bruce would never have allowed it, but now he sold his catalog to Sony for $1 billion, so it's up to them now.
See, just like with our mainline podcast, everyone else does it bad, but we could do it
We
good.
would always do a better job.
We would do it great.
We would do a great job. Oh, we also didn't do a Bev check because we're here in person. We're both drinking water. Actually, you have seltzer.
No, I've talked about my beverage machines. This is from the seltzer machine. This is a lemonade seltzer. So it does have some sweetener in it. A little bit of probably sucralose, I'm guessing.
Pretty good.
And vitamin Bs. There's 3 different versions of, I don't know what vitamin B does, but they have like a vitamins version of the seltzer water that just has a
some
bunch of
riboflavin in there. That's B13, right?
Probably.
It's the only one I know.
Well, someone tell me
what
what
riboflavin. So you got it. You got to look into it.
Someone in the Discord tell me what vitamin Bs do, because this has got a bunch of vitamin B, and I don't know when to drink it. I think
it feeds your blood. It's good for your blood.
B for blood.
B for blood. Yeah.
even though I don't like jukebox musicals, I really want to see the Meatloaf Bat Outta Hell musical, which I've heard is terrible, and it must be. But the reason that I want to see it is because every song on Bat Out of Hell tells the exact same story. And so I don't know how they made a musical string them all together, because every song on Bat Out of Hell is 8 minutes long, and it's all, hey, I'm a really cool motorcycle guy. You're a hot chick. Let's fuck. Oh no, you fell in love with me. So now I'm going to try to break up with you or kill myself.
It's like Jim Steinman has this one very particular fantasy that would never in a million years happen to him.
No.
Because have you seen Jim Steinman?
Yeah.
And then his avatar for all these fantasies is
Meatloaf.
Meatloaf. Jim Steinman, you were one of the absolute fucking greats, and
Yes.
And you are missed. You were a weird looking dude.
Is he dead?
Yeah, Jim Steinman died, I think, a year or so ago,
Okay.
fairly recently.
I know Meatloaf died of COVID, I think.
No, he lived. He's just, I think, doesn't think COVID is real.
No, he died.
He died? Meatloaf died?
Meatloaf is dead.
Did we just not hear about it because he's canceled?
I don't know. I think he died of COVID though, even though he was like anti-vax.
Well,
I think. Yeah.
sometimes that has
Yeah,
consequences.
sometimes that happens.
Folks, allegedly. We're going to add allegedly
Yeah.
to all of this because we are not looking it up.
Yeah. My phone is being used to film this
Yeah, we're
conversation.
both. That's the thing is
so-
we don't have like access to our phone notes anymore because we're shooting video for the bonus pod, which I guess we're going to have be a thing just for folks who are on the $8 level or higher.
Yeah,
just so
something
that
to
there's
differentiate.
something that differentiates the $5 and $8 levels.
It means I need to make this angle on my studio a little more.
It's a great looking room. I got guitars behind me,
I just
behind
got the
you.
computer screen.
Yeah, but you have your little Steamboat Willie over there. If you're,
Yeah.
I don't know if the camera's got the Fraggle up there, or your nice.
Yeah,
or,
Wembley. I also, if anyone's wondering if you can see the pink blob on top of that bookshelf over there, that is the hump that I put under my back to be Bob Igor for Halloween.
That was still a really good bit. Dalton, we got to get into our ideas.
We have to pitch Mamma
Right.
Mia. For the
Here's
Dark
where I think,
Universe.
because neither of us came in prepared with specific ideas, right? We're going to figure it out in the air.
Just like we did with Bill Corbett for Robot
Yes.
Monster
So
45 minutes ago.
I think to start with, let's talk about the things that we like about Mamma Mia that we would want to preserve. Because I have a couple things I do really like.
Okay.
I like that this is sort of a story about a young woman who is coming to adulthood and is reaching this really big adult milestone, taking an opportunity to sort of, through other people, get to know who her mother was at her age.
Mhm.
My favorite, like, sort of emotional beat in the entire film is when she goes on this like montage set to some song I don't fucking remember
Mhm.
with all three of the prospective dads, who at this point I think they all know what their relationship to each other is. This is we're all here because we used to date your mother, and they each tell her little stories in song
Yeah.
through part of the same song, and it's just this sweet thing where you're understanding that like she's getting to live a little bit in a very safe way. It never gets weird with the possible dads. She's getting to live a little bit of the thrills of her mother's life through her mother's eyes, and I like that angle of it. Even though the conflict between the mother and daughter in this, we don't remember the names of any of these characters, do we?
Nope.
Okay.
Meryl and Amanda.
Yes. Donna is the mom's name, which I remember because that's my mother's name.
Okay.
And she's Sophie, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So I like that angle because the conflict they built up between the two of them, which is all based on these lies and misunderstandings that are really, really thin. And
Yeah.
it's a very, very boring character conflict. That doesn't interest me that much.
Mhm.
But I like the idea of this being sort of a story about getting to understand your parents better.
Yeah. I like the basic premise. I like the idea of like, I don't know who my dads are, so they're all going to come out here. And I'll get to know all of them and I'll figure out which one is the real one. And then at the end, it's kind of like, oh, it doesn't matter. We can all be a family. I like that. I think that's a good premise that is executed very poorly here. But I do like that. I also think that's a perfect premise for a musical.
Yeah.
Which I guess we should decide first. Is the Dark Universe one a musical? Obviously, there's precedent for that in the Dark Universe. I
Yeah.
feel like it should be.
I think we kind of have to do it. And also,
Is it jukebox or is it original?
well, that's the thing is that either way, we don't have to do the music today, which is
Yes.
great. So I think we should probably figure out the story, and let's try to honor our own principles in terms of a musical, and let's try to work on the story first, and then if we realize that it fits in a certain mood of a certain artist, we will mold it towards that rather than work backwards. We also, I don't think we've mentioned in the area that Balthazar's other stipulation is that this story has to include sirens.
Yes.
We don't mean that the popo were rolling up. We mean that we have...
Please don't say popo. Very weird to hear that coming out of your mouth.
That's why I said it, Dalton. Why do you think that I say dope so much?
The 5-0.
Yes.
I've got some great names, by the way, for the next edition of Rapper Cap. I don't know when we're going to have time to do it again.
Yes.
But man, I have some great names saved up.
Okay. So we have to have aquatic seductresses whose songs traditionally draw sailors towards rocky shores to their deaths.
Which is why my first instinct with this story was to think about the Ghost of Mrs. Muir. That actually, this might serve as a good sequel to the Ghost of Mrs. Muir about the daughter figuring out who her ghostly father is. Although
That's true.
It would probably contradict what we do in the Ghost of Mrs. Muir, but I'm imagining this ghost of an old sea captain fitting in really well here, and having it, maybe we could even go back and it could be a prequel to the Ghost of Mrs. Muir of when that sea captain was alive.
Well, because we know he got around, right? So it could be that our tie-in here is that he's simply one of the possible dads.
Or do we gender flip this? And the captain from the Ghost of Mrs. Muir is our Meryl Streep. And long ago, he has a daughter from an encounter with a group of sirens when his ship shipwrecked. And she wants to know who her mother is, but he doesn't know which siren in the sort of orgy that he barely escaped with his life ended up being the mother of this child.
This sure is a Dark Universe pitch.
And so they have to brave this conclave of sirens who now don't want to kill him because he is carrying their daughter back to them.
Yes.
And figure out who the mother is.
He also gave them a thrilling night. And so, you know, they're endeared to him in that sense. And also, I imagine that we are probably going to lean a little bit comedic here, right?
I think we have to if it's a musical.
It's a musical. So yeah, I like the idea that now our three moms are these three sirens. It allows us to sort of go in a similar way to the film, to mix in diegetic and non-diegetic music, right? Because the three older women in Mamma Mia were also once pop singers. And now these three sirens, they do sing in the actual text of our story, but we can also have characters break into song spontaneously. We don't have to be fussy about it.
Yeah.
So maybe that allows us to do a mix of original and established songs, where the songs that are sort of the sirens songs that they sing are kind of from a particular songbook. While we were watching, I believe you mentioned Kate Bush.
I did mention Kate Bush, yeah.
Which I think would be an interesting thing. I don't know the songbook that well.
I don't know it well enough to say like, oh yeah, the sirens would sing this song, this song, this song. But I feel like sonically, having a bunch of sirens singing Kate Bush songs feels right.
I also think Florence and the Machine could be a good fit.
Sure.
That's one where I know well enough, I guess. My wife's a big fan. I also like Florence and the Machine. Let's not commit to that at this very moment. I do think Florence Welch should maybe want to be one of the sirens. I think she would eat that up.
Oh, true. I was going to say maybe we could assign each siren a different artist. Like one is the Kate Bush siren, one is the Florence siren.
Yeah, or maybe even to go with a wider palette of musical styles. Like maybe we have one that, because like those two are kind of similar, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we just pick Kate Bush or Florence Welch doing Kate Bush, right?
Well,
and then we also could have like one that's more pop and one that's more R&B. That could be cool.
That could be cool. Yeah, we could have like the Mariah Carey siren.
Yes. That also would help to indicate like what sort of like what their vocal range is going to be, right? So for Florence/Kate, you have something a little bit in a lower sort of contralto or tenor register, right?
I don't know. I don't know their vocal ranges.
You should, but you know what the range is. You know what I'm talking about. You study these
I know. Yeah,
right.
But
and then for Mariah, you have our soprano with creepy whistle voice powers.
Yeah.
And in
whistle
between, we
tones.
could have somebody in a Carly Rae Jepsen, you know?
Sure. Do we like the idea of the man being the captain from?
Oh, no, I think we're committed to that.
Which was Hugh Jackman.
Yes!
So of course we put him in a musical.
Oh, my God. We have to do it, right?
Yeah.
This is
of course
also
Hugh Jackman's in the musical.
This is part of the fun of doing it in this format is that we don't have time to second guess ideas. You just got to, whatever you got to run with it, which is probably honestly more like what a real Hollywood pitch is like. Because if you get a note from a producer and they've got the checkbooks on their desk, if they have an idea, you say yes and.
So Hugh Jackman is our Meryl. His daughter is now who's a good like vocalist?
Well, what if we continue the
Ariana
flip?
Grande.
No. What if we continue the gender flip and it's a son, right?
Okay.
And so we could have somebody, not necessarily him, but somebody in a Reeve Carney, perhaps, younger now, because we're looking for somebody who was the age that guy was when we first started hearing about him and like Turn Off the Dark, which was fucking 15 years ago, Jesus Christ. Not the Dear Evan Hansen guy. Not Ben
young,
Platt.
Yeah. We'll get Ben Platt and age him down. We'll digitally age Ben Platt down.
Whoever's playing Evan Hansen now, right?
Sure.
Someone
from Broadway.
Yes. To do that.
Maybe the son is also, we could also have a little conflict here where the son wants to settle down and get married, but his father is a man of the sea.
Right.
And Hugh Jackman wants him to be a captain like him.
Yes, and that's the inverse of one of the conflicts, we'll put in big quotes, between Donna and Sophie in Mamma Mia. Gosh, I really hope that Sophie's her name, otherwise I really sound ridiculous. Where Donna is freewheeling. She's been in one place, but she's pointedly never married anybody and never been committed to any particular guy. And so the idea that her daughter is settling down and that settling down might take her somewhere else, although not really, because she has plans for the fucking hotel they all live in. So she's not really going anywhere and she sort of is following in her footsteps. So who the fuck cares? This is a better, cleaner inversion of that idea where we have this man who wants to live a more ordinary life with his wife-to-be, and his dad can't live with it because he is one, like you said, he's a man of the sea. He believes in, he was a girl in every port type person. This is probably not actually his only son.
And what we do to keep some of the deception there, the boy wants to find out who his mother is. Maybe his fiance is interested, like wants to know who his family is, that kind of thing. The boy finds a treasure map. Or like a map, and not necessarily a treasure map, but a map to the sirens. Instead of finding the diaries, he finds a map in his father's things and tells his dad, okay, you want me to be a captain. Show me what life on the water is like. And is secretly influencing them to go back to where the sirens are, so that he can meet the sirens. But Hugh Jackman doesn't realize it until they shipwreck.
Right. Okay. So I think also the son does not know that they're sirens.
Yes.
And that's that creates an actually reasonable conflict where the fact that the son is not communicating with the captain is actually putting all of their lives in danger.
Yes.
And if he was being transparent about what was happening, the captain would at least be, hi, those are sirens.
Yeah, we can't go back there.
But if they get close enough, they're going to get caught up in there. They're going to get hypnotized because that's how it works. They beach the ship. And then they're stuck there for a while.
The sirens kill some of the crew members. They're about to kill Hugh and our boy. But then one of them realizes this boy has siren blood. Let's wake them up and figure out what's going on here.
Yeah. So I guess the idea is we can create even further conflict if the captain actually stole the baby from them.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm trying to think about why would they give the baby to them, right? He must have stayed there, perhaps entranced for whatever the gestation period of a half mer person is.
Yeah.
And then was able to break free at some point, has this baby, realizes I can't leave them with these monsters, even if in fact they do not mean him any harm.
Yeah.
He's in a weird state. He's just been hypnotized for however many months, reasonably freaked out.
And
right?
the sirens don't remember because they fuck sailors all the time.
Yes,
they don't remember which one of them had this kid.
Yes. So we have that there, and it creates a real, actual sort of horror movie conflict. There can be, stakes like we would have in one of our movies normally.
I think the fiance also needs to be with them.
Yes, she should be on the boat.
Yeah.
And it's Amanda Seyfried. No, we should have Seyfried. I understand her name is pronounced Seyfried.
Seyfried?
Seyfried. Yes.
Okay.
My friend Tyler interviewed her, and they spent time together.
Yes.
So I trust her.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I think that perhaps because Dominic Cooper's character in Mamma Mia has nothing to do, that instead perhaps her role could be sort of in playing peacemaker here, in helping to resolve these conflicts for the good of the family she's about to marry into. And also, if she has kids with this guy, that will also be part siren. And that's something that she'll want to learn about.
Yes, I think it would almost be funny if the sirens kind of take her under their wing.
Yeah.
And they're like, let's teach you about men, honey.
Right. I mean, as if we're dealing with a classic 19th century sailing ship, there would likely be no women in the crew. Right? Not necessarily. There were women sailors, but I think we're mostly talking about pirates.
Yeah.
Because the military and merchant marines or whatever were discriminating.
Yeah.
But so that would be great. And then you get to play some good sort of get to have a Summer Lovin' style girls versus boys point counterpoint at some point.
And at the end, I think they end up getting married in the Sirens' lair.
Love it.
With the Sirens attending, they sort of patch things up, and the Sirens become sort of like their extended family in a way.
And like in Mamma Mia, they have to see. There's no way for them not to know which of those sirens is the one that gave birth, unless they all gave birth, and he's just the one of the babies that didn't drown or they didn't eat. I don't know. Like it's trickier with that arrangement of
That's
sex
true.
organs.
It could just be
I
like
guess.
one of them survived.
Yeah,
maybe.
Like,
maybe sirens eat their young.
Maybe, and that's why he had to take it. And then now once he's grown up, it's like, well, we don't really want to eat an adult.
No, you know what? Sirens, because they're traditionally women, sirens will always eat their male offspring.
Right.
And Hugh Jackman gave them only sons. And so the others were eaten, but Hugh, when he woke up, saved this one boy.
Perhaps awakened by the shock of seeing them eat two of his sons.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why he's so protective of his son and wants his son to follow in his footsteps, because he may have other kids out there who he doesn't give a shit about.
Yeah.
But this is his Nemo, right?
Yeah, and that he raised on the ship, maybe with him.
And then but it's so funny because we maybe surmise that this sailor, Captain Craig, right? He maybe didn't grow up on the sea, and he became, a crusty old seaman over time. But there's this sort of thing where, like, this thing that was a grand adventure for him was just regular growing up for his son. And for his son, the adventure would be to settle down and be a husband and a father.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe the big compromise thing is that I'll be a fisherman, but I'll come home at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right. So I will live on the sea by day, and I'll also have the means to go visit my mom. And
because their child will probably need to live by the sea because it'll be
amphibious.
a quarter siren. Yeah.
There you go. So the big question we haven't answered is the music of it all.
Yes.
Exactly. And I do like maybe the idea that of doing. I'm two ways about this, because one is the mixed artist jukebox musical is sort of cheaper in that it's just a grab bag of hits.
That's what the SpongeBob musical is.
Yeah, but it does allow you to select more carefully songs that will fit the story you're trying to tell.
Yes.
So I kind of want to go back to the idea of having the three sirens each have, if not different specific artists, then different genres of music that they sing that represent the sort of point of view that they're going to have on this. We have someone who is in that sort of moody alt rock mode, right? And then we have
our Hayley Williams.
Yeah, and we have one that is more pop, more sunny, right? And we have one who is maybe more sultry, and maybe she's trying to get back with the captain, right? And maybe kill him. Who knows, right? And like in Mamma Mia, you do end up having one of the dads marry Donna at the end. We could still have that B love story if we so choose.
Our Pierce Brosnan.
For our Pierce Brosnan, we will get who will be appropriate. Terry Hatcher.
One of the sirens is like,
I don't know if she can sing.
Maybe one of the sirens intentionally released her hold on him because she was like, I've always hoped you would come back because you were different than the other sailors.
Of your own free will, yeah. Hard to trust anyone who did used to hypnotize you and may have participated in eating one of your
offspring,
children.
yes.
Yes.
But that's the dark universe,
Yeah, that's
baby.
right. We're doing heavy shit. So, and if we want to do further Dark Universe tie-ins, we did talk in the Ghost and Mrs. Muir episode about the possibility of Captain Craig having at some point encountered the creature from the Black Lagoon, or even having been a keeper himself at some point.
Yes.
So that's something where we could make further reference to it. We could maybe seed the possibility of a further spinoff, a movie set in between or before this one, even further back. So, or we could have one of our post-credit scenes be the shipwreck where he dies. That's because we previously / next see him as a ghost.
I actually have a lot of ideas for the death of Captain Craig that I don't think we'll have room for in anything. But you know, the lagoon gets me thinking. I have lagoon ideas with Captain Craig, but
it would be really funny if all of our all of our bonus pod pitches refer back to the Ghost and Mrs. Muir, the way that the Mummy is like the Iron Man of the mainline films.
The Ghost and
like
Mrs. Muir.
This is just the Ghost and Mrs. Muir extended universe.
Now, can we still call this movie Mamma Mia?
Yeah, because he's trying to find which of those three sirens is his mama.
Mama Sea, because they're in the sea.
I think we should call it Mamma Mia : an aquatically themed pop song that is in the film. So
Mamma Mia : what's a good ocean song?
The first thing that comes to mind is Mandy by Looking Glass, but that's not the title that works for this.
Mamma Mia :
my love, my lady is the sea.
Mamma Mia : Beyond the Sea.
Yeah, there you go. Mamma Mia ! Beyond the Sea.
Yes.
There you go. There you have it. That is our first pitch for this series for Studio Mandate.
And it's a prequel to The Ghost and Mrs. Muir.
Yeah, they might not all be direct tie-ins to pitches that we did on the main feed.
This one just fit really well.
It just happened. It happened to work really well. So I think that's a great starting point, especially since we're probably going to use this pitch to advertise the Patreon to other people, to people on the main feed. I think that's great. And if anybody has thoughts about that, is excited about it, hit us up on the Discord at the AAD discussion channel, or on our various social media platforms at Dark Universe Pod.
Now, we do still have some other segments to get to.
We sure do. And my big worry was that this was going to take up so much time that we were going to have to not do all of our segments. What we didn't do is we didn't talk about whatever movies we watched in the past month.
That's the thing, and I watched a lot of good movies.
Well, okay, so here's the thing, folks. We're open to the possibility of making this show bi-weekly so that we have a new episode of one or the other show every week. This does increase how hectic our workload is by a bit, right? Because we no longer have that week off where we only have to worry about doing a movie night screening on the Discord. But if the total of our Patreon per month hits $1,000, we will go bi-weekly on the bonus pod. We will become, between the two shows, a weekly program.
Between the two shows.
Between the two shows, a weekly program. It will be alternating between Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe and Are You Afraid of Dylan and Dalton. Obviously, there will be the occasional week off, and if we have a two-parter of the other pod, we will not be doing this here, right? But that's something that we're down to do, but we can't justify doing more work if we're not at least going to try and squeeze some more money out of you. So if you can get that number to 1,000 for any month that number is 1,000, we will do weekly shows between the two shows.
We're not that far off.
We're really not.
We're like three-quarters of the way there.
Like 7:30. Now, the thing is, right now, we're preaching to the choir. These people who are already paying us.
Yes.
Perhaps
Tell your friends.
Tell your friends. We will maybe put this, we will make sure to notify in the next episode that we record in the Dark Legion, I guess.
Yeah.
That we'll be offering that as a thing. Maybe we'll get that bumped up.
We'll play a clip from the Mamma Mia pitch, and we'll talk about this on that episode.
All right. So anyway, that was fun. I'm looking forward to doing more of these.
Yes.
The next one is, as requested by Soonmot, this is Josie and the Pussycats.
Hell yeah.
And it has to feature werecats that are not related to the cursed cat people from Kill Your Darling. So we have to come up with a new kind of werecat to be in a, I would assume, power pop band, Josie and the Pussycats. By the way, this will be unrelated also, but Irina's roommate in Kill Your Darlings is named Josie.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yes.
Was that a reference?
It kind of, yeah. I mean, like, it was just a little Easter egg.
Yeah.
Does not necessarily have to be part
About
of this
her.
at all. But I just wanted this. No one pointed it out. Nobody noticed it. So I thought I'd throw it out here. So next month, this will be in 5 weeks because we do have 2 episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe between here and our next bonus.
Yes.
That
I
will be-
love Josie and the Pussycats. Great film.
Great film.
Great
I love
film.
it.
I'm looking forward to rewatching
Critics
it.
from the year 2000 were just fucking not ready for that movie.
They
It's
weren't ready.
so good. We got Adam Schlesinger cuts in there. We got Kay Hanley.
Mhm.
We got fucking Adam Duritz, who's another one of my boys.
And we're doing 2 musicals in a row, really.
Yes. And for this one, God, if it wasn't this time of year, maybe we'd be like, hey, let's write a song for this because it would be in our
Don't
wheelhouse.
Stop it.
But we can't
Stop
do it.
it.
No,
Don't
I'm
do it.
saying right now, I'm going to look directly into the camera. For those of you watching the video version,
We're not
I
doing
can't
it.
write a song for this. I'm sorry. I want to let you know that I would love to do it, but it is fucking hell month for us right now.
I'm
So-
realizing that someone later on here requested a movie that I was going to have you watch for Dalterion next month, but
Yes.
we'll do something else instead.
Well, no, next month you were going to have me do All That Jazz because we bumped.
Well, I was going to do a Halloween themed one instead,
Oh.
but we have it for.
Sorry for that noise, everybody. I don't need to do that noise ever again. That was awful.
I'd rather get the noise than Popo.
I don't refer to them. I want to write it in the script for Dark Legion, and I'm going to make you
Ugh.
say it.
Well, it's a full cast. The cast member is going to say it.
No, it's going to be the narration.
It's, oh, okay.
Yeah. Or Nick will say it.
Nick will say it, and then I have to say it.
Just imagine Tom Cruise saying Popo.
Oof.
Pretty good.
You know, Popo in German, that's the German word for butt.
Great. It's appropriate.
Yeah. Josie and the Pussycats next month as Werecats. Love that film. And I guess there's no time for me to talk about how I'm finally watching the Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah,
for
no,
the
let's
first
take a
time.
minute. All right. Let's talk about it for a minute, just so people know what kind of stuff they'd be missing if we don't go to bi-weekly on the bonus pod.
Oh, also, we never talked about Alien Romulus.
Oh, yeah, which I really liked.
I really liked it too. Everyone's hating on it online. I don't
Okay.
fucking get it.
General audiences are loving it to the tune of a whole lot of money.
Yes,
So,
but Twitter people are being
Twitter-
fucking dumb. It's
right.
Prometheus all over again.
There are
Prometheus fucking rocks.
okay, this is a movie that people dislike for completely different reasons than they disliked Prometheus. Critics who love Prometheus are the ones who don't necessarily like Alien Romulus. Like, I'm not going to throw like Siddhant Hadladka under the bus because, first of all, he's one of my favorite critics, and
Mhm.
he's like sort of a homie, a prospective homie. I would like
Yeah.
to be better friends with Siddhant, but you know, he was one of the one who was really kind of talking about it like this sort of. I think he called it a Rise of Skywalker problem, which I don't think.
I don't
I
think it does.
I don't agree with at all.
It's a requel.
It
Like,
is
but that's
a-
what they have in common.
So, all right. So the thing
And I
that I
get that
think you and
people
I
are-
agree about Alien Romulus is that yes, it's hitting a lot of familiar beats from Alien and Aliens, intentionally, but it is also different enough from those things, introduces enough new ideas, and approaches them in a different enough tone and structure that to me, it feels more like something. I mean, you can maybe say it's more like The Force Awakens in that way. But
I think
I think it's a good movie.
I think what's happening overall is Marvel fatigue has sort of expanded into IP fatigue,
Can't argue with that.
which includes requel fatigue. And I think among also the conversations about AI and resurrecting dead actors, which is a terrible mistake.
Oh
this
yeah,
movie
that's
makes.
the one big thing about this movie
fucking
that sucks
It
is
looks
that
like shit.
it looks awful. And here's the thing:
The rest of the movie's gorgeous.
it looks great. Also, like surprisingly, that effect is also like half practical. But
Yeah.
it's clearly that's not the half that makes it look like shit.
Yeah.
It's a very recognizable problem of those are the dead eyes of a digital character scanned from a dead person's face.
It looks really bad. It
And
sucks.
I also have real problems with the sort of, they have not revealed all the details about this. There was an article in Hollywood Reporter or somewhere talking about the specifics of how it was practically done to make sure that people know that Ian Holmes' family was consulted about it,
Mhm.
which seems like sort of damage control on release date, just to
Yeah.
make sure people know.
But why even take the fucking risk?
Yeah, here's- and
there's
like-
no need for that character to be the same character.
No, I mean, it would be, first of all, it would be cooler and better if it were Michael Fassbender.
Yep.
But also, it would be cool if it was not somebody you recognize. It doesn't have to be, you don't need to have characters or actors from the previous movies. The thing that I really wanted from Romulus that I think I got was I wanted I think I talked about this in the last bonus pod. I want another horror movie where the monster is the xenomorph, the way that you can do other horror movies about fucking vampires that aren't Dracula or Nosferatu or whatever. It's a really good movie monster that you could plug into a lot of stories. And in this case, Fede Alvarez just plugged it into Don't Breathe because it is another movie about a bunch of young people who are destitute and looking for a way out of their shitty hometown.
Yeah. It's Don't Breathe with a xenomorph, and it's fucking cool.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of cool deaths. There's a lot of cool action sequences. I like the characters, the way they like the new android they have. I think is a cool take.
Really good character.
Really great take on the android
second to
thing.
David because David's always untouchable.
Yeah,
but a really good character and a really good performance that introduces new wrinkles to the usual sort of dilemmas of how do you deal with a synthetic person in the context of being like sort of a person, also explicitly property type thing.
We see a bit more of the world of Alien and the impact of the Weyland-Yutani Corp.
We've gotten all these glimpses at this horrifying technocracy that Ripley lives in, and now you get to see it from the perspective of a person who's even worse off than she is. You get to see it from the ground level.
Yeah.
It opens up the world.
Yeah.
And further, it demonstrates that you can do more good alien movies that don't have to be about explaining where the fucking alien comes from.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't throw away Prometheus. In fact, it uses Prometheus.
Which I was actually shocked by. I thought it was going to ignore the Ridley Scott sequels, and it doesn't. It actually follows up on them. And it kind of helps close the loop
a little
without getting that third in the trilogy.
It plays into also the cool new monster at the end of the film. I'm trying to do enough to say about why it's cool without giving too much away. But all of the stuff that's pure callback wraps up by the end of what you think is the third act.
Yeah.
But is actually just like an Alien, but different. There is one more big monster sequence. Pardon me. I drink all that soda. And that monster sequence involves a brand new fucking practical alien that's freaky in a completely different way from the other one. It's cool. It's new. I like it.
There's IP fatigue. There's requel fatigue, which makes sense because a lot of these things are bad and cheap cash-ins. There's also the fatigue of the AI stuff. And so I think, especially in the wake of like Deadpool and Wolverine, which I know a lot of these same people are just like really cynical about, and for good reason.
And I ripped that one a new one, as we discussed.
Yeah, which I still haven't seen. I will. It bled into people's preconceived notions of this film and had a lot of people going into it in bad faith. And also that people are fans of the Ridley Scott films. And so am I. I love Prometheus and I love Alien Covenant. And I would love to get the third in that series. But the thing is, if anyone's going to do that kind of lore expansion of Alien, I only want it to be Ridley Scott. And so if I'm coming at this from, oh, they're not going to do that, they're getting someone else to make an Alien movie, then yeah, make it a horror movie like, you know, that feels like an Alien movie. And I'm okay with that. I don't need it to be Prometheus, because I don't want it to be Prometheus unless it's Ridley Scott. I want it to feel like an expansion of Alien 1979 and Aliens, the good ones, and let it be a good requel.
Yeah,
and I think it is.
What I want from any IP expansion or whatever, and like we want to take more time, I want to highly recommend Terminator Zero, which is an anime series, 8 parts on Netflix right now, written by Mattson Tomlin, who is a screenwriter who I'm very fond of, and directed by, I do not remember the name of the director because I do not remember anime directors, but it's from a studio that anime people have heard of and like. And it does that same sort of thing where at first you feel like it's going to be a retread. And in actuality, it goes off in its own fucking direction and tells its own story that is clearly personal to these storytellers. All that I want from endless franchise expansions, other than don't do them, is take this thing that audiences like, that they're pre-sold for, use it to get them in the theater or on your channel or whatever, and then use what's good about those stories to tell your own fucking stories and do your own fucking things. Like, you could argue that Alien Romulus doesn't do that because it's a little bit too in love with those first 2 movies. And I get that criticism. Personally, I think it's fun. I think it's different enough because it is a slasher movie in a way that none of these other ones are, especially with the young cast, right? It is a different log line. It is a different kind of movie built around the same basic conceit. I don't want Romulus 2, though they did just greenlight Romulus 2. What I want is bring in a different storyteller. Tell them, if you could make one Alien movie, what would you make? That's what I wanted out of the fucking Star Wars. Now I don't want anybody to make Star Wars anymore because I'm sick of both the content and the fans in a big, big way.
Except for Andor Season 2.
Andor Season 2 I need, but then they can stop, right?
Yeah, then I might honestly never engage with Star Wars again after Andor Season 2.
What I want and what I haven't
since Andor Season 1.
Extremely denied by The Rise of Skywalker is I think that if you get to make a Star Wars, you should get to make exactly one Star Wars. If you get to make an Alien, you get to make one Alien. Not only because that becomes a slingshot for your personal projects in the future, the way it does when you get to do a run of Batman and now your creator-owned comics sell better, you have to put your entire ass into it because you're never going to get another shot. That's the feeling that I got from The Force Awakens. That's the feeling that I got from The Last Jedi.
I did not get that feeling from Force Awakens, but I did get it from Last Jedi.
That's fucking not the feeling you get from The Rise of Skywalker. This is, shit, I have to make another Star Wars.
Yeah.
If you're going to expand a franchise, I want you to put you in it. This is your Star Wars. This is your Alien. This is your Terminator. Results vary, but fuck, man, Terminator Zero, it's not anything like what James Cameron would do. It's what these guys would do. And it's Terminator. That's what I want.
Now, we are going to move on because we said we would not have these conversations until we had 2 episodes, but then we had the conversation anyway. But
no, that's what we're not going to do anymore.
I am withholding my Lord of the Rings talk.
We can do a whole episode on that.
Except maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
My girlfriend is making me watch all the extended editions. I have just Return of the King.
Well, then we should save that convo for when we're done with the trilogy anyway.
Yeah.
This is going to become another Treks Education where you have to give us your, update every time you watch.
It'll be probably by the time we next record, I'll have finished the Lord of the Rings trilogy for the first time.
It's so wild to me that you never saw it.
Well,
it's so hard to be born in 1989 or 1990 and have not seen those films.
I saw the first one and then, never
89 or 90
them.
For you, right?
90.
90, okay.
I've tried to watch the trilogy before, never made it through.
Well, I've tried to read the books and haven't been able to do that.
Well, you can't read, so
that's true. It's particularly difficult for someone who can't read.
Well, I mean, those books are difficult for people who can read.
Yeah.
So not a great place to start in your reading journey, I would say.
I should do The Hobbit first, right? That's a kid's book.
Yeah.
I actually have read The Hobbit.
I have not.
Yeah. I have almost no memory of reading it. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break, and then we are going to jump into our 2 recurring segments where Dalton and I make each other watch particular films. We are going to do a Treks Education where Dalton has watched Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and a Dalterion Collection where I have watched John Cassavetes' film, A Woman Under the Influence.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be right back. Hey everyone, Dylan here in the Edit Bay. Before we get back to the show, we're going to take a quick second to acknowledge our lovely patrons, specifically those who are pledging at the executive producer and studio executive levels. Thank you so much to studio executives Andy from the Discord, Bill French, Birris, Joe Valiant, Cadel, and Tom Webster, and to our executive producers Brian Egan, Callie, Mar Bendlar, Matt Thackeray, and Soonmont. All right, enough of me. Back to the show. We are back. We're going to dive into Treks Education. Dalton, you just watched perhaps the most infamous Star Trek movie, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, co-written and directed by William Shatner himself. And you can tell, right?
Yeah, you can definitely tell. I just finished it this morning, and yeah, that was a movie I watched. This one, I'm of 2 minds about it.
Uh-huh.
It's definitely not good. It's goofy.
Yes.
It's very goofy.
But that's not really why it's bad, I don't think.
Why do you think it's bad?
Well, I think it's okay, it's not inherently bad for it to be goofy. Mm-hmm. As demonstrated by the previous film, Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, which is very goofy and super fun.
Yes.
I think to begin with, the comedy is bad. All the comedy in the movie is bad. And there are scenes that I wasn't even aware of because I was first exposed to this movie through, I taped it off of USA as a kid, and they trim it down to make it fit into 2 hours. And so the scene early on where like Sulu and Chekhov are lost in the woods and they're like blowing into the communicator to try and trick Uhura into thinking that there's a snowstorm above them. They cut that.
Good.
That was just like maybe the worst scene in the movie. It was not until my teens when I finally saw that and be like, wow, this movie is actually worse than I thought it was. But there's a lot of bad comedy. And as I understand it, that was the studio saying, oh, the last one was a comedy and it was a hit. Better make sure there's a comedy. And William Shatner was like, I want to do an epic where Kirk fights God.
Mm-hmm.
They said, make it work. And he could not make it work.
Stand back. Stand back.
Stand back. Yes. So that's.
I'll admit, I kind of chuckled.
There are a couple of jokes that I think are funny. That's one of them.
Yeah.
The joke we're referring to, folks, and perhaps we'll segue right into it in the audio feed, is that Kirk and Spock and McCoy are being held in their own brig by the Vulcan cult leader, Sybok. And the three of them are in the brig and they start hearing Morse code tapped on the wall.
D, end of word. Stand. New word. B. A. C. K. Back.
And then the wall explodes.
Stand back.
And then Scotty delivers the immortal line,
What are you standing around for? Do you not know a jailbreak when you see one?
which I think is actually a pretty good bit.
Yeah.
When the next scene bumps his head for no fucking reason, less funny.
Yeah. And then passes out. Very weird, very broad humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm of two minds because there's a lot that's baffling about it. I talked about the scene on the Bill Corbett episode. I think the most baffling moment in anything I've watched, the scene where Uhura dances naked on a sand dune to distract some guys.
Uh-huh.
What the fuck was that? There's a lot of weird Uhura stuff in this.
Yes.
Also with her like strangely seducing, was it Scotty? Yes.
Who, the two of them have never had that kind of relationship on the show or the previous films.
Uhura
It comes out of nowhere.
Uhura really hasn't been a character in any of the movies.
No, not really. One thing that I will also say about Star Trek 4 is that it gives everybody something to do in a way that a lot of the other ones don't. And I think this movie kind of pretends to do that, but everything revolves so centrally around Kirk that everything that all the other characters do, aside from a little bit of Spock and a little bit of McCoy, mostly just makes them look like idiots.
Yeah.
And that's one of the key complaints, not just from fans, but from the cast of the film, who felt that in typical Bill Shatner fashion, this entire story was constructed in order to make Jim Kirk as cool as possible at the expense of every other character.
Nobody can resist Cybonk except for Captain Kurt.
Mm-hmm. And
everyone falls prey to
let's give a little plot summary. Star Trek V follows the crew of the for comedy purposes totally fucking broken USS Enterprise A. Literally nothing works just because it's funny.
I was really expecting that to play into a lot of like plot
never comes back.
Conflicts later in the movie, and it just doesn't.
Now it's just so we can have some slapstick in the beginning, just have some goofy sound effects as technology doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's just you can see so many of the fucking eraser marks on this script. It's fucking frustrating. They're called out on a high priority mission because a bunch of human Klingon and Romulan dignitaries has been kidnapped by a space televangelist of sorts.
Can we talk about that Romulan dignitary? Because she's
a cutie.
She's a wife.
When you said wife alert at 17 minutes, I knew exactly who you were talking about.
Yep, she's the wife of the film.
They've been captured by a sort of faith healer, I suppose, a laughing Vulcan named Sybok, who turns out to be Spock's half brother we've never heard about before.
Mm-hmm. Kind of sounds like they're saying sidewalk.
Sidewalk.
Spock and sidewalk.
Yes, you can go ahead and call them that.
Mm-hmm.
He uses his mind melding abilities innate to Vulcans.
Also, he looks exactly like Rip Torn.
He looks so much like Rip Torn. Although when I was a kid, I thought it was George Carlin.
Oh, I could see
It's actually an
actor
actor named Lawrence Tubnell in a role that was written for Sean Connery, and he passed.
I could see Sean Connery in it, but I can more see. He showed up, and I was like, "Oh fuck, Rip Torn's in this. How bad can it be?" And then he starts talking, and instead of talking like this, he has a very gentle, high voice, and I was like, "That's not Rip Torn."
Yeah,
but it's so weird because he looks exactly fucking like Rip Torn.
Instead, it's an actor.
Except Rip Torn was probably young at this point. And
Rip
probably
Torn
didn't.
Was never young, never happened.
Yeah, Rip Torn always looked like Rip Torn.
Yes, I think it's this is or Turnbull, Lawrence Turnbull. an actor so unnoteworthy that despite playing the main villain in a Star Trek movie, I don't remember his fucking name.
Yeah.
And I don't care. I can tell you fucking people, some of the people who were recurring extras on Next Gen, I don't remember this guy's fucking name.
Yeah.
David Warner, however.
Love David Warner.
David Warner plays a fun little roguish human diplomat who does not get enough to do in the movie.
He gets almost nothing to do.
Good news, Dalton.
Neither does the Romulan.
David Warner is also in the very next Star Trek movie as a different character.
That's very funny.
And is also great there.
I went to high school with a guy named David Warner.
Was he cool? Did he have one of the great voices?
Nope.
Was he ever in an MST3K episode?
Nope.
All right. Well, fuck him, I say.
But I love this David Warner.
So Sybok, who uses his innate Vulcan mind meld powers to relieve the inner pain and release the inner demons of a person, to put them sort of a serene and very suggestible state, he turns not only an entire colony into his followers, but also corrupts the entire skeleton crew of the Enterprise, including Sulu, Chekhov, Scotty, and Uhura. I guess not Scott. Eventually, no, never Scotty.
Chekhov looks busted as fuck in this movie too.
It's not his best. He ends up looking a little better by the time he's on Babylon 5.
He's getting old, but it's weird because he still has the baby face and the boyish haircut. But
they're all wigged. Like, this is the only Star Trek movie where Spock's wig looks like bad. It looks really weird. Somehow, even though he's older in the next one and has the same do, I think somehow it looks more dignified on him. Here, I don't know. It's the wrong bangs length. I don't know. So Sybok's plan is to steal the Enterprise and take it through the Great Barrier that surrounds the center of our galaxy to find the mythical planet Shakari, which he believes is home to God. Capital G God, the God who created our galaxy, our universe, all of life as we know it. And has been referred to under various names throughout the mythologies and pantheons of different planets. So this is supposed to be sort of Eden as we know it.
Yes.
As it turns out, he believes he's been contacted by this God. And as it turns out, he has. It's just not actually God. It's some nasty energy being who's been trapped on this planet.
Who looks like the Cowardly Lion.
Looks like the Cowardly Lion. Is actually played by, I think, actor George Murdoch. I know his fucking name. He's actually looking to hitch a ride on the Enterprise and go back into the galaxy and wreak some havoc. And so they actually do have to defeat sort of God. In the end of the movie, Sybok sacrifices himself, seeing the error of his ways, and the Enterprise crew all makes peace with each other and returns out into another voyage that Dalton would probably rather watch.
Yeah.
And they sing Row, Row, Row Your Boat around a campfire.
That's so weird. Kurt,
that bookends the film.
Captain Kurt literally has the line, I love Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Who fucking loves Row, Row, Row Your Boat?
They're discussing what song they want to sing around the campfire, and someone suggests Row, Row, Row Your Boat. I guess it's Bones. It's like, I love Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
I love Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
Yes.
They can't believe Sponk's never heard of Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
Yeah. Did you know, by the way, Dalton, I know you don't, but
I don't.
Give me a minute. So there's a bit in one of the weird jokes. That joke, I think, actually kind of works because they don't explain it. In part of his preparation for this camping trip with the three main guys go on a little boys trip together, Spock has packed marshmallows to toast, but he calls it a marshmallow, which I think is funny only because no one remarks upon it. But in the novelization for this film, there is a whole page dedicated to explaining how Spock could make such a stupid mistake.
Now that's a writer having fun.
Yes, and that's because Bones went into the Enterprise's computer and did a find and replace for marshmallow. So it's always referred to as a marshmallow so that Spock would call it that and he could have a laugh that Spock says it wrong.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not as good as him just doing it, though.
Yeah, but if you're going to read the novelization, you want to find little nuggets like that.
So Dalton, what are the things that you liked about the movie?
So this is one of the only, probably the only Star Trek movie I saw part of as a kid. I think I had seen the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek, and I was like interested in getting into Star Trek, and I was flipping around the channels and saw that Star Trek 5 was on. And I was like, oh, maybe this is one of the older ones. Maybe this will help me get into classic Trek.
Fuck, this is where it all started. This is where your weird hatred of Star Trek began.
And I saw it was the scenes of Kirk mountain climbing. And I got about 10 minutes in and I was like, this isn't what I want. And I turned it off and I never went back to those old Star Trek movies.
Another fun fact, that was the first film that my dad went to go see in theaters after I was born, and he walked out.
Yeah.
Right when Kirk falls and gets caught by Spock with the rocket boots, Dad says, no, I think I'd rather go hang out with a newborn baby.
Now, in retrospect, I didn't hate the Yosemite sequence. I think it's kind of fun, given the context of having seen the first 4, to see them on leave on Earth in a place that we recognize. There's something, I like the weird anachronism of him sort of free soloing on El Capitan and then Spock having rocket boots. That's kind of fun. I don't need all the extended stuff of them like camping together necessarily, but I like the idea of seeing these guys enjoying their shore leave.
Absolutely. I always say that that's so important to any long-running story with characters, the characters who you are told are a family and get to see in crisis. You got to see them off duty. That's the thing. On paper, I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't love the campfire stuff, but like the him doing the free solo stuff, while definitely directed by William Shatner and written for himself. There's something kind of nice about it. Nothing about this ever hooked me, but the thing is, like, there is a lot of memorable stuff in it, and like, it was goofy in a way that I was having fun, in a way that I kind of talked about in the Bill Corbett episode, where it's just so baffling. Like when they go and they meet God, and he looks like the Cowardly Lion, and it's like, what the fuck is happening in this movie? At least that's something I'm going to remember. And here's where like I know intellectually that I need to rate Wrath of Khan above this movie.
I fucking knew it.
But looking back, I have now seen Wrath of Khan twice. I cannot remember a single fucking thing that happens in that movie.
It's so fucked up.
I can't remember anything. I remember what Ricardo Montalban looks like in it, but all I remember is there's a lot of people in ships and they're going back and forth between the ships, or they're talking between the ships or something. What happens in that movie? Does anything happen?
They're fucking grappling with age and mortality and the consequences of their actions that they think they can fly away from at the end of every episode of the show. But those stories keep going, Dalton, and they're very important to those people.
It wasn't important to me.
Okay, well,
and so like,
you're a monster.
The thing is, like, looking back, I'm gonna remember Uhura dancing naked on the sand dune. I'm going to remember Spock watching himself be born, and then his dad being like, too human. I'm going to remember Bones letting his dad die.
That whole sequence is good.
It's fun.
It's really good. Well, I wouldn't call it fun.
Well, yeah.
But I think it is.
It's memorable.
It's fulfilling the potential of the story you're being given. And it's bullshit that we don't get to see whatever Kirk's thing would be.
I'm going to remember them drone striking God, and it was Shatner getting hit in the chest with lightning bolts. I'm going to remember Rip Torn, like there's a lot of this film that is like, where I'm going to look back and be like, oh man, that was kind of goofy. That was kind of fun. I don't remember anything about Wrath of Khan. It is complete. I've seen it twice. It's completely
not a problem. I think that'll be solved by watching it again.
Yeah, it's like, this has memorable moments and settings. Even the opening sequence with like the weird guy with the bad teeth. Like, there's a lot of stuff that
fucking
like
dude who looks like the trash can man from The Stand.
Yes, I was never like bored in the way I was bored during like Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Like, I gotta give it that. Like, it gave me some weird. It kept my attention throughout.
Oh boy!
And not all of them have. So my ranking, I feel like we're far enough in. We're 5 movies in. I can start having a ranking and updating it.
Do you want to spoil that, or do you want to put it? I mean, I guess we're not going to devote a whole episode to it. So yeah, go ahead, lay it on me.
What, the ranking?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to do it as we go.
Let's do it
as we go.
I should start ranking the Dalterion Collection.
You can. They're also different, but
yeah, that's true. It's more complicated.
Number 5, least favorite, Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Okay, fair enough.
Number 4, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier.
All right, so you are going to put it below the
I
Wrath of
am
Khan.
going to put it below Wrath of Khan because...
You know what? No, don't do this for me.
No, here's the thing. I know that when I watch Wrath of Khan both times, I was like, I can understand this is a good movie. Like this, Final Frontier, I can watch and be like, oh yeah, this is bad. I would say if I was going to choose one to put on, honestly, I'd probably rather rewatch Final Frontier.
I think
but it's a worse movie.
All right.
I like bad movies,
that's fair.
though.
I mean, there is the kind of thing where, like, there are a million medium movies that you will never remember, but you would never say, let's, I don't know. I would never say that Night Swim, completely forgettable movie. I wouldn't say that's a worse movie than fucking The Room.
Yeah.
I would absolutely prefer to watch The Room again.
Yeah.
And I will, probably when I get home.
Yeah, so it's tough, but I will put Final Frontier at number 4. Maybe I'll reevaluate in the future. Number 3, I'm putting Wrath of Khan.
Okay.
Number 2, I'm going to put Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
You're a big Search for Spock head.
Which means number 1, Search for Spock so far is exactly what I want from a Star Trek movie in just about every way. That's what I was hoping to get from a Star Trek movie.
I'm so nervous.
Search for Spock.
I'm so nervous about Star Trek 6 now because, I mean, you've already heard me talk about it. I have the poster up in my bedroom. You've seen it on bonus episodes.
People say the even ones are good.
I love Star Trek 6, but it is very much in the vein of Star Trek 2. It's from the same director.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a lot of ships, interiors of ships.
A lot of interiors of ships, yeah. I mean, but it's a different kind of movie. I would say that it's more of a thriller.
Oh, can we talk also about the really tacked on Klingon subplot here?
Some executive probably said we need Klingons in it.
It's completely superfluous.
Yep.
If the movie's over and then they're like, oh, and also there's a Klingon ship here that wants to kill us. And it's like, no, the movie ended already. Like, we defeated the bad. Who is this guy?
You just fought God.
Yeah. And now, like, a single Klingon shows up and they're like, well, we better get the other Klingon to talk to him. Very weird. That's a very weird.
It does give us, please, Captain, not in front of the Klingons.
Yes.
Which is another one of those ones like, I have to admit, that's kind of good. I like the moments where Spock decides to be funny.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's a lot of comedy in Spock, like just kind of misreading humor or shrugging off humor in a funny way.
Mm-hmm.
But every once in a while, in a way that does truly feel in character, Spock will decide, I've got a joke. And he'll do the joke. And because he does so few, and because Leonard Nimoy is genuinely very funny, it lands. And so even a joke that lame, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
The same way you're more likely to like a bad joke if like your dad says it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Klingons don't have to be in there at all.
We'll see what I think of The Undiscovered Country. I'm excited to wrap up sort of the first phase of Star Trek films before moving on to the next generation.
Yeah, we've been talking about. I'm very curious because there are movies in the next gen part where I'm really curious about your response. Not necessarily in a like I think they're gonna love it, I think they're gonna hate it kind of thing, but like in I think you'll have some stuff to chew on.
Yeah.
And that excites me. I'm back on board with this. Like, I know that for a while I was like, let's pull the plug on this whole segment. I'm back on board with this. I will say this, Dalton. I think that when we're done with Trek's education, I think we should switch roles and we should do the Dalterion Collection and you should put me through a long-running series again, a franchise or a filmography, perhaps, of generally equivalent length that I can rank. That is maybe not all going to be great movies.
I'll have to think about what that is because it would have been Halloween, obviously. Yeah.
Let's do another 3-hour Halloween episode.
But let's move on because we do have a hard out because of it's getting late.
We are recording a little bit late at night and I am yelling.
I really want to hear what you thought of A Woman Under the Influence.
Okay.
Because you did not rate it on Letterboxd.
Because honestly, there are a couple of movies that I've encountered where I have watched them and determined that I don't want to give them a rating because my appreciation for their craft and my level of enjoyment are completely divorced.
Yes. And let me give a little background on this one before we dive into it. because a lot of people may not be familiar with this film. A Woman Under the Influence is a 1974 film directed by John Cassavettes, who is an actor and writer, and also he wrote it. He wrote and directed it, and starring his wife, Gina Rowlands. And the reason, actually, if you didn't hear me talk about that in Discord, last episode, I said we were going to do all that jazz for this month. But after we tape...
But before we even put the episode out, Gina Rowlands passed.
Gina Rowlands passed away.
She was in the movie we talked about last month.
She's in Night on Earth. She's in the first segment with Winona Ryder. She is in The Notebook, which was directed by her son, Nick Cassavetes. But her greatest role, and I think one of the greatest roles in all of cinema history, is A Woman Under the Influence, which I first saw in college. It is, and it also stars Peter Falk as her husband in the film.
In a role that will make you mad at Columbo.
Yes, aka Columbo. John and Gina and Peter were all very close friends. John and Peter star opposite each other in Mikey and Nicky, which is another great film from this era that John did not direct or write, but stars in. But A Woman Under the Influence is basically about a housewife played by Gina Rowlands who clearly has, like, I would say, like, schizophrenia of some kind. Yeah,
I mean,
like,
we don't ever diagnose her, but that's the general vibe.
But she is clearly...
It's a broad diagnosis.
Yeah, it's a broad diagnosis. She is detached from reality in some way and is getting worse. And her husband, played by Peter Falk, is a construction worker, very blue-collar guy, and has no idea how to deal with any of this, and is also kind of a piece of shit. And
at first, he seems like he's a pretty dedicated husband, and then he's very protective of her. But it's really more like he's protective of her reputation.
Yes,
and his.
This movie is 2.5 hours long. It does have a plot, but not in the usual sense. It is more a character study of this woman as she is sent away to get help, in quotation marks, because this is 1974 for schizophrenia. Not like we know what to do about it now,
really
but
all
like,
they do is they send her away for 6 months. She receives very generic, unhelpful treatment and relapses the moment she gets home.
Yes. And then, it comes back. The movie's 2.5 hours long, but maybe has like 5 to 7 scenes in it. Like we joked, I watched it again after Gina's passing with my friends Calvin and Gio. Oh, both friends of the show.
Both
people know
previous
them.
guests.
Yeah, previous guests. And Sarah was there as well. And we watched it, and they do the 6 months later after she comes back from the hospital, and we looked and we saw there's 45 minutes left, and we're like, Jesus, how is there still 45 minutes left? And we joked like, oh, it's probably one scene, and it is. It's really long scenes, which is a thing I love about the movie, but it is basically just a diary of this household at sort of this pivotal moment in her mental illness. And that's sort of the background. So, Dylan, what was your reaction to this?
I will say that it takes a while for it to get its hooks into me.
Okay.
Because I do find the pace of like the first act of the movie to be laborious. We get these very I'm aware of like how Cassavetes writes, and that the idea is that it's not as if the script is improvised. It's not as if they're just letting people run. They're not it's not like they're working off of an outline of a scene and everybody just make conversation.
Yeah.
But the actors are supposed to sort of take things and run with them and make and interpret and play around, right? And I like that sometimes. My trouble here is that I know that this concept began as the idea for a stage play. And you can tell. The reason why it's a film is because Gina Rowlands was like, I don't think I could do this character, 6 nights a week and be safe.
I can't believe she did it once.
Yeah, exactly. It's so intense. But it feels to me more like a play, and there's a lot of times where I really can't tell why it's a movie. And maybe that's because, like, this is a personal preference. I tend to like when direction, camera work, and blocking is really deliberate. I like things that are... I like there's probably a better term for this, but I'd like to think I like a technical filmmaker. I talk about why one of the many reasons why The Matrix is my favorite movie is that movie is fucking shot for shot, boarded, and executed exactly as it was envisioned. And I also like movies that aren't like that, right? Like I also like things that are loose. I like handheld. I like sometimes time improvised comedies and stuff like that. But this sort of brand of verite or whatever is just kind of bouncing off of me because they have this scene in the first act where Peter Falk's character, Nick, has brought all of his work buddies back to the house after an all-nighter. And they're entertaining the crew. And they're all just kind of shooting the shit. And they're having this sort of circular conversation. And then we literally do wrap back around and have Nick sort of repeat an entire line that he already did in a way that is totally organic and does happen in real conversations. And it's not as if it says nothing. It shows a little bit about how he wants to control the party, that they've gone around away from something and now he's pulling them back in. It's not useless. It just takes a really long time. And a lot of it is in like a single static shot. And it kind of feels like that moment when you're in theater and you realize that someone's missed a cue and they're all just kind of trying to work their way back to the cue and get the show back. And everyone's totally in character. They're just doing the work of acting and they are getting the scene back on the rails and continuing it. And the illusion's never broken unless you're wise enough to realize so-and-so lost a cue. Now we're back. That's what that scene feels like to me. I don't enjoy that. I don't think it's by accident. I think it's just they're following. I talked a little bit how I didn't like how stagey the dialogue and interactions were in your previous pick.
Yeah.
We were talking about Night on Earth. I'm almost on the opposite side of it here.
I'm realizing your criticism is kind of the opposite here because you're saying like, oh, I like something that feels very natural when it's like this kind of, and the characters feel very lived in and real. And I'm like, this is kind of the extreme of that.
Yeah.
Like it feels very real.
I think that there's a target to hit. I think that what I want is that point, and particularly in the case in dialogue or something like that, but in the sort of emotional realism of cinema, I don't think it should be a replication of what's real. I believe it should be a cinematic version of what's real. I want believability over naturalism. I think they're two different things. Talk about it a little bit in Kill Your Darlings, right? This is also one of the criticisms I have with in my review of I Saw the TV Glow. It's like, why do I want to watch teenagers mumble to each other the way that teenagers really mumble to each other? I'm watching a movie. I would like the characters to be capable of expressing themselves better than actual teenagers express themselves because they're bad at it.
Yeah.
I understand it's a creative choice and it's very real. I find it very unpleasant to watch in a film. Again, I think that's part of the intent in that movie. I just didn't vibe with it, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, though, sorry, you go ahead.
Well, yeah, I want to talk about Act 1 a little bit here because I do want to rebut a couple things, which I think John Cassavetes here, his directorial style, I think it is very technical and intentional. Like, I don't think it is a lack of skill that is happening here. Yeah, like
I'm saying a little bit might be lack of budget because the less money you have, the fewer setups you can afford to set up.
But also, I think this is I actually love the camera work in this film. It's one of my favorite things about the film and the long scenes. Personally, and this might just be a personal taste thing, but like, not from frame one of this movie am I ever bored. Like, whether it's something Gina Rollins is doing or like, yes, we spend a lot of time in these rooms with these characters, but I feel like every moment deepens your understanding of them in one way or another. But also the thing about the long scenes and the camera work is this feeling like you cannot leave this room. And that's one of the things I really like about the really long scenes is like in another film, you'd see the part of it you really need to see, and then you're out and you go somewhere else and you move on. But I think what makes this film so impactful is you don't get to leave this house. You are living with them. And this is what it's like all day. And so you're going to spend all day with them and you're going to see how she interacts with her kids and her husband's work friends. And you don't get to leave the house because Peter Falk doesn't get to leave the house because she doesn't get to leave her brain, and the camera work is either naturalistic to the point where you feel like you're just standing in the room with them. Like sometimes characters are
fly on the wall.
Are a little out of frame, but it feels like you're standing there. Or there's a reason John Cassavetes made a movie called Faces. He's up on some faces and you are seeing their brain tick, like whenever you need to see someone's brain tick, you're seeing their thoughts,
Performances are all right. I'm not meaning to talk shit on it's I believe it's all done with intent. I believe it's all what's supposed to be. This is a matter of personal preference.
Sure.
So this is what it's really coming down to is I think this is a great film that I don't particularly like.
Well, I also want to say about this first act that as harrowing as this film is, because it really is, it's also very funny. There's a lot
of really incredible moments of like those real moments in a high stress environment. I'm thinking of I Am Not a Spaghetti Man.
Yes.
Her father during this very stressful conversation after her name is Mabel comes home from 6 months in an institution. Just the little things that are sort of like almost an argument that are completely nonsense.
And like, oh God, that's such a critical moment because you're also seeing, this is your first time meeting her father.
Yeah.
And it's clear that he wants to get away from her.
Yeah.
He is trying to make up excuses so he doesn't have to deal with her in this uncomfortable situation.
Heartbreaking. The moment, honestly, when the entire movie
I know exactly what you're going to say.
I know
exactly what you're going to say.
Dad, will you stand up for me?
And it's just her verbalizing for really the first time in the entire movie. It's set up really, really well. Like I'm saying, I'm not saying this movie is bad.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
there are
I know.
things about it that I think are incredible.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just demonstrating this. I'm just trying to...
There's a stylistic thing here,
why
yeah.
there's just a style clash here.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible moment of she's just explained her entire life, which is that she is a woman who has, first and foremost, she's struggling with a very difficult mental illness that nobody understands. She doesn't understand it. She needs help. And she also kind of struggles to accept it because of the context in which it's given to her, which is all going back to her other problem is that she's a woman and she's expected to fit into a particular box. She's forced into that box and sometimes she likes that box.
Yeah.
Right? There are things about that box that are great.
Yeah.
A lot of the times she does not want to be in that box. She does not have a choice. And the whole thing of sending her away to an institution, as it frequently was the case, and maybe in some cases still is, how do we get her to fit back in that box?
Yeah.
Doctor, put her back in the box. Make her fit in the box.
Electroshocker until she fits.
Until she's fucking in the box, right?
She talks about going through electroshock therapy.
Yes. And it's so fucking tragic because what she's living through is a hyperbolic version of a trap that lots of women live in, even if they're not coping with a major mental illness, which is I used to be my father's daughter and now I'm my husband's wife and that's all I get to be.
Yeah.
And even when my husband is mistreating me in front of my father, that's not his business. This is how it works. And there's this moment where her mother is trying to explain to her father what she means, and he's just not having it. He's like, basically, that ain't my job.
He doesn't at first he literally thinks
she just means to
stand up. So he like stands up. He's like, what's this little game we're playing? And she's like, no, sit down. I need you to stand up for me.
And everybody in this family and in this room and in her life has been given a justification not to hear her concerns, not to take her seriously, that everyone will accept. But the thing is, in this society, they don't need it. They feel completely justified to treat her like they do.
And as soon as her mother explains it to him, is like, no, she means like stick up for her kind of thing. He realizes that now his image is under threat because he has just not complied with this thing. He's like, oh, I'm supposed to do that as a father. So then when she starts having sort of a breakdown again, he gets up to try to defend her and he storms through. He's like, don't treat her like that to Peter Falk. And he comes in, sees her standing on the table and then leaves. And he does it. You can see he's like, oh, I'm supposed to, like, people are expecting me to do this. I'm going to go do the right thing. You stop talking to her like that. But then when he sees what he's really dealing with, he fucking bails.
Yeah. And that's the thing where, like, again, so much of this movie is brilliant.
Yeah.
I would trim like 40 minutes off this fucking movie, but that's me, right?
Yeah.
They have the excuse for why they don't have to treat her like an adult. They were always going to find one.
Yeah.
They were always going to find one. She was fucking doomed. And that's the doom that we are made to experience through the unpleasantness of this film. Gina Rollins is particularly when she gets to go really big, it's fucking heartrending.
It is.
It's
yeah.
so upsetting to watch, and she's incredible in it. There are smaller moments where I think it doesn't work. I'll be honest, there are times where she's doing this sort of like talking to herself, wrinkling her face, and playing with her hand stuff, which again might fall into that difference between realism and believability. On screen, to me, it feels like affects you do to present something as a character more than something that really happens, even though I think in my experience, I could actually point to having witnessed that is actually how those symptoms present themselves.
Yeah, I mean,
on film, it doesn't look. On film, it looks stagey. It doesn't look right.
See,
you have to turn it down.
I love those moments. Because I see those moments on the subway in New York City every day. You know, like all those little affects she has of like the talking to herself, her like tics and stuff. Like if you've seen a homeless person with mental health issues on the train platform at 2 a.m., that's what they're doing, you know? Yeah. And what I love about this tour de force performance from her is like, for me, it's the big moments and the small moments. Yes, it's like her freaking out about not being able to be with her kids when she goes up, which like that whole scene when the doctor comes is like, oh my God.
Fucking harrowing. So intense.
But the little moments at like the dinner table where no one's even looking at her and she's just like, she loves being the housewife, and like you can see in that early dinner scene with all the guys, she's loving being the homemaker here, and she loves being in control. And she's like having these little conversations with herself, these happy conversations of like, you know, like, haven't I done such a good job? And you don't hear them, but you can just see it on her face that how proud she is of herself. And she's kind of having these little hypothetical talks and doing this blinking and stuff. And I'm like, for me, it never feels like caricature. And like, that's what's so hard. Like, this might be
it's an extremely fine line to walk.
It's such an extremely fine line. And I feel like this is the only performance I've seen on film of like extreme mental illness where I'm like, oh no, that's exactly what you would see from a person with schizophrenia. That's how they behave. And it's not a stagey version of it. It's not toned down. It's not cranked up. It's just how, you know, these people live, you know?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of personal taste that I think that when you do get the camera up in somebody's face, I think that you are sometimes better served by understating a reality. But personal preference, personal taste, right? The whole chunk of the film from the point where Nick decides to call the doctor to all the way right up to the very end, to me, is just absolutely untouchable, incredible. Right?
The stuff,
I never at that point thought, God, this shot's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And as you've explained, it's probably the point that I should be bothered by the stillness. I should be bothered by how long it's going. And because there's that sort of idea that maybe every time that she gets to play host like this, and any time when she starts to feel, I am, like you said, I am in control here. I'm hosting. I get to be the life of the party. And then she asserts herself and becomes the center of attention. Nick won't have it. He absolutely won't have it.
The way that Nick always wants two things from her simultaneously. Like when she comes back from the mental institution and she's very quiet and she's very controlled because she's learned all these things of how to be normal and how to not let her illness show. And Nick hates it. Nick pulls her aside and starts telling her to do the tics and stuff. Yeah. He's like, hey, remember the, thing? He's like,
he wants her to be herself, he says.
He says he wants her to be herself, which means all the things that she's probably been drilled into her over the last 6 months to not do around anybody under any circumstances. Don't do this. He's like, no, I need you to do that. But then when they're at dinner and she starts expressing herself in other ways he doesn't like, he's like, you need to stop. You know, like he wants her to be ill in the ways that feel comfortable to him, but not in the ways that don't feel comfortable.
Box. Yeah. I have customized the box slightly for you in the ways where you get to be yourself in the ways that I like. But just in that, in the box. It is also like for the guy whose most famous character is the internet's favorite soft boy, Columbo.
Yes.
He is terrifying.
Yeah. He really is. I mean, we were talking when we were watching it, like obviously Gina Rowland's performance gets the attention, but he also delivers an incredible performance in this film. Like,
he's great. And there's this thing where like he is a terrifying parent,
mhm.
and his solution to almost every problem is just to exert force.
Yeah.
And at first, you think he's a cool customer, right? When he's talking on the phone, they're trying to get the road crew out there to work. He's like, no way. I have an unbreakable date with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to do it. We worked our hard day. We're done. He'll cave for them. He'll compromise for them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's whatever, it's his job. It's whatever financial, economic situation. Sometimes you don't really get to make that decision or whatever. Doesn't call her, doesn't tell her until he's already kept her waiting for hours. That's where you first start to get an idea.
She's gone out and had an affair in the meantime.
And at this point, yet you don't know what her deal is yet. And I don't know what the movie's about. So I'm thinking maybe this is all going to be about the consequences of her having this affair. Is also, first of all, even if she did not have a serious emotional disorder that had her sometimes detached from reality, the conduct of the guy she picks up,
she gets assaulted. Yeah.
Right. So there's the thing was like, oh, is this going to be about dealing with the fact that she's sexually assaulted by this guy that she picks up? And she retracts consent pretty very plainly, as she has the right to do. But it's all sort of matters where she, at this point, does not know who he is.
Yeah.
She's actually somehow, like in whatever the way that her disorder works, she has sort of jettisoned the memory of meeting him and is mistaking him for Nick.
Yeah.
In a way that is very scary for this guy, and you would feel bad if he hadn't just sexually assaulted her.
Yeah.
So, and it's just, it takes a while to figure out like what's going on, and I like that too.
Well, and I also think,
honestly, I think a lot of my gripes with this movie just come into that one chunk where I feel like I lost interest during the dinner for a while, and then I started to notice more of moments like that where I'm like, I don't feel that we need this to be running as long as it is. The more we talk about it, the more I like it, which is nice.
sort of the opposite of Night on Earth.
The opposite of Night on Earth.
Well, and the other thing is like, I think it's such a weirdly singular movie that I think it does take a lot of time to get on its wavelength and figure out what it's trying to do. And like, I remember when I first watched it in college, I kind of had the same thing where I was like, oh, this is really long. And then watching it again, knowing what it was like, I think this was only my second time watching the film because it's not one you watch all the time.
The thing is, I don't think I'm ever going to watch it again.
Yeah. But I think the second time you watch it, knowing where it ends up and knowing sort of the arc of it, there's details in the first thing that maybe hook you a little more than when you're like, I don't know what this is about. I don't know what the point of this is yet. And you don't really find out until the scene where she's kind of until the birthday party that goes really wrong, you know, and they start talking about, once he calls the doctor, like you're basically locked in.
By that point, you know that she's like schizophrenic, but
also, you know, like what the movie's vibe is, you know.
Also the incredible tragedy of the ending of the film.
Yeah.
Where
there's no resolution.
You get the impression that this whole movie could just start over again.
Yeah.
The very next day.
Yeah.
You just loop it. Nothing will have changed. Nothing will ever change.
Yeah.
And,
she's home now.
Yeah. And there's this sort of not even necessarily mask of contentment. It's just this is what she's accustomed to. This is her life.
Yeah.
And
then you get these like weirdly human moments where I mean, not like but like these like sort of touching moments between them, even as everything's going off the rails, where she's like, boy, I'm really nuts, aren't I?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, tell me about it, you know?
It helps you to understand where some of the real tenderness is between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because she has moments where she's lucid and she has moments where she's manic in a fun way. And she has moments where she is terrifying.
Yeah.
But there's like enough there, right? God, Nick's mom is a terrifying character.
Yeah.
She's very scary. But yeah, there's a lot. There's so much to dig into. I think it's really just little. It's the amount of time it took me to dig my teeth into it, and the frustrations that I had with, just not vibing with it for about maybe even the first full hour.
Yeah.
Before I really got into it. Combined with how deliberately and justifiably unpleasant it is, made it really hard for me to say that I like it. I like it more now. I love a movie that gets you talking for a long period of time, right? I see all your arguments for things. Still, like, certainly a lot of it's just like not to my personal taste. I am definitely interested in, believe it or not, I mean, I guess you probably would get it now that I'm talking to you. This was my first Cassavettes.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, as we said, I didn't go to film school. I didn't have film school type friends.
I think you'd really like Mikey and Nikki. Mikey and Nikki is the same sort of casual, real vibe, but is more plot based and tighter. Basically, John Cassavetes plays a guy who's pissed off the mob, and the mob is coming to kill him.
Okay.
And he calls his best friend Peter Falk and is like, I got to get out of town. And he's just having this manic night where he thinks everyone's going to kill him. And Peter Falk has to be like, hey, calm down. We'll figure out a way out of this. And it's all over one night. And Ned Beatty plays the hitman who's coming to kill him. It's a really great watch. He didn't, like I said, he didn't direct or write it, but it's very much in this vibe, but a little bit more tight and enjoyable.
Well, I mean, Night on Earth did not make me want to watch more Jim Jarmusch, but A Woman Under the Influence definitely made me want to watch more Nick Cassavetes. I'm kind of interested in Opening Night.
John Cassavetes.
Sorry,
Nick is their son.
Nick is their son.
Yeah.
I kind of want to watch. I kind of want to see Opening Night.
I've never seen it, so maybe we could add that, and it could be a first time for both of us.
That'd be cool. But we should mix it up. Here, we shouldn't do 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Not like Star Trek. I think because we're doing all the Star Treks, we should probably keep mixing these up.
Yeah.
But
maybe that's something for the future. I'm glad you found a lot to like in it. It is one of those movies where, like, I think you could, like, if you and I watch this together, I bet we could pause it every 5 minutes and have a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. But just, you have to be prepared that for a bunch of those stops early on, I'm going to be like, yeah, but I'm bored.
Yeah. But especially in that back half.
Absolutely.
I mean, even the stuff.
We could do a whole hour and a half on this for sure. And I'm sure there's lots of podcasts that have.
Even the stuff like after she's taken away and Nick is in charge of the kids and he gets them drunk.
Yes.
Like he takes them to the beach and then immediately is like, no, let's go away from the beach. Like
he's
no idea.
In no way a fit parent, but he's the one who's left to care for them. And
he like gets one of them hooked on beer like immediately.
It's
wild.
Yeah, it is currently streaming on Max and the Criterion channel. If you were in the US, give it a go. I know I've just said lots of reasons why I didn't dig it, but if you think you can stomach it, we've given away a lot of the story, but that's not the point. It's the performances that really drive it. It is an experience to experience. Just give it a go.
If you're a movie fan, I think it's one of those movies you should watch before you die.
Yeah, well,
I think it's like essential watching.
I am embarrassed not to have seen it before, but it's funny that like the last couple of years I've realized that I always kind of thought of my dad as kind of a cinephile, but in actuality his tastes are fairly basic. Like it's like, oh, Coppola, Scorsese, okay, cool, but I never watched a John Cassavetes movie.
Yeah,
I haven't seen like really any French New Wave, right?
We should do a Godard.
Let's do a Godard. Yeah. And because my film education has been so, like ad hoc, right? I'll end up picking a lane and I'll dive into it for a while. This has been my horror movie education, has been being your friend and doing a podcast with you, right? So yeah, but I am excited. I do someday want to turn the tables on you and show you some of the classic non-genre cinema.
Once we wrap up Trek's education, we'll flip the tables.
That'll be fun. And if you want that experience to continue to happen at a lively pace, please consider upping your Patreon thing and convincing your friends to start paying us, because as we like to bring up, because it's important information, Dalton's going to be out of work in a little bit.
Yes. And, in fact, maybe by the time you hear this, I think I have 1 week of employment left.
Yes.
And I was going to say next month we will do All That Jazz.
We'll do All That Jazz. Bob Fosse.
I think you're going to love this one.
I'm really excited to watch it because Fosse is another filmmaker that I have very little experience with. And this is the one to get him to know him with.
This is the one.
Life.
And it's Roy Scheider.
And I love Roy Scheider.
You're going to love this one. So join us next month for, what do we got? We got Josie and the Pussycats. We got Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, and All That Jazz. The only podcast that gives you those 3 movies all in one episode.
That's right.
And until next time, stay afraid of us.